This is CBC Winnipeg News.
Good evening. Thank you for joining us. A Manitoba mom wants others to know just how serious RSV can be for young babies. RSV and influenza are two of the respiratory viruses circulating in Manitoba right now, leading to a surge in patients at the Children's Emergency Department. There is no vaccine against RSV, but as the CBC's Alana Cole reports, doctors point to other tools we can use to help protect kids and the healthcare system.
Are you gonna show off?
This is Walker. His mom says he's happy and healthy now, but last May he got sick with RSV. She says he was admitted to hospital for 3 days and needed oxygen and a feeding tube.
It was such a terrible time and a terrifying time. The hospital staff is amazing and they tell you, okay, day 5 and 6 are the worst. You can do this, you can get through it. And you just wait for the worst to end and hope on day 7 you're one of the lucky families that sees that spontaneous recovery and gets to go home.
Walker was only 6 weeks old at the time. His brother was nearly 2 and also got really sick, but recovered at home. McLennan wants to raise awareness so people understand what can seem like just a cold for some can be serious for newborn babies. Respiratory viruses, including RSV and influenza, have led to a recent spike in the number of sick kids at Winnipeg's Children's Hospital Emergency Department. Pediatric infectious disease specialist Dr. Jared Bullard expects it to stay busy over the next several months. He says measures to reduce the spread of COVID-19 also meant a lot of kids weren't getting viruses that normally circulate.
When you have your primary infection, or the first time you get it, you're going to be sicker, and we know that. And so as a result, we have a whole cohort of children, more than we typically would, that haven't been exposed to these viruses.
There are ways to help. He says everyone should get the flu shot.
Influenza vaccine is very effective. And this year in particular, we know it's matching the viruses that are circulating in the community.
Other measures include staying home when sick, masking up, and good hand hygiene. McLennan says her boys now need inhalers when they get a cold. She decided to share her family's story to get the word out.
People could see, local people could see, okay, this is here, it's happening, let's protect our babies. You know, the best thing that you can do is not go anywhere near any newborn babies if you even have the smallest little sniffle. Yeah.
Alana Cole, CBC News, Winnipeg.
HSC's Children's Emergency Department was once again overwhelmed with sick kids this weekend. Shared Health says 177 patients came through the emergency department just yesterday, with 14 kids admitted to hospital. The bulk of the patients were suffering primarily with viral and respiratory illnesses. The daily average of children's patient visits in October was just over 145 patients, so that's a jump, a big jump. At midnight, there were 8 patients in the pediatric ICU. The pre-pandemic baseline capacity was 9 staff beds. The NICU was caring for 46 newborns at midnight. Its normal baseline capacity is 50. There will be a telephone town hall for parents and caregivers tomorrow at 7 p.m. You need to go online to register at engagemb.ca. Then they'll call you. Dr. Elizabeth Doyle and Chief Provincial Public Health Officer Dr. Brent Rusin will be available to take questions relating to the care of sick children and when to seek medical care. No dynasty, no Grey Cup three-peat for the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. The Bombers lost to the Toronto Argonauts by 1 point yesterday. The CBC's Joanne Roberts was in Regina to witness fan reaction.
The Toronto Argonauts have won the 2022 Grey Cup.
Not the ending Bombers fans hoped for.
I'm a little bit upset, but we went back-to-back already, so you can't really be too upset. The team played well. They weren't the best team tonight. There's always next year.
Dejected players need time to figure out what happened.
I dig a little bit deeper and search a little bit more. My brain's a little numb and stalled right now, so but there's always positives out of any situation. So as long as you can find the positives out of them, then that's how you turn it from a negative to a positive.
There was optimism before the game as fans were excited about the possibility of a three-peat. At a Winnipeg pub after the game,
I'm so proud of the Blue Bombers and what they bring to the city. They did a great job. They put in an amazing effort. They really did. Of course, it's sad.
I was there in Calgary in 2019 to see the win. So 2 in a row was amazing. We've got a really good crew. I feel very good about 2023.
Despite the loss, running back Brady Oliveira made a pledge.
I promise I'll bring another Grey Cup back to Winnipeg during my time being a Bomber, and I got years left with this organization, and I'm just going to use this as fuel, add it to the fire, take it into this off season, and have the best off season of my life, and come out next season and run hungry like I do every single week, but maybe just a little bit more.
Players and fans alike are taking comfort by looking forward to next season. Joanne Roberts, CBC News, Regina.
Many small retail businesses in Winnipeg say they hope there is a next season for them. They say they need support now more than ever. Some shop owners say they are stretching every dollar just to stay afloat as profits shrink due to inflation and rising costs. CBC's Emily Brass has more.
It's been a North End staple for more than 100 years, but Pollock's Hardware Co-op is struggling to make ends meet.
We monitor the money flow daily. Like it is, we check the bank, we make sure we figure out who we can pay, who we have to put off. We have to make those decisions every day.
Goods, transportation, wages, everything has gone up, forcing tough decisions on what to keep in stock. The store expects to just barely end the year in the black.
Our margins are shrinking, and so that makes us have less buying power overall. And so it's just a vicious circle. And then people don't see enough stuff in the store, they don't come in.
Just up the street, Modern Coffee is facing similar struggles.
It's month by month now, and it's hard. I've had to make cuts that I've never wanted to make.
The business was just taking off when the pandemic hit. Owner Allison Slesser had to lay off staff, running the cafe nearly single-handedly. Rising food costs and soaring interest rates have slowed cash flow to a trickle.
It wasn't a miracle. It was me putting myself on the line. It was me working all the time. Me taking out loans that I know I'm going to be stuck with in one way or another, paying for.
Both businesses took advantage of pandemic subsidies until those supports dried up. The province says it is helping by cutting payroll taxes and pouring millions into programs to help train employees and pay wages. But advocates say small businesses need more help now.
For many small businesses, yes, it absolutely is an emergency. They're not sure if they're going to make it through the next 6 weeks. They don't know if they can make payroll.
The Canadian Federation of Independent Business is urging Ottawa to extend its deadline on federal loans and asking provinces to lower the tax burden. There's also a request for customers.
Shop local, think local, your dollars stay here. Like they literally stay here in your community.
Emily Brass, CBC News, Winnipeg.
Police want to remind people to check conditions before heading out on the ice. This after searchers found the body of a 70-year-old man from the Fairford area. Police say he hadn't been seen for more than a week after he'd gone ice fishing on Lake Manitoba. A search party used snowmobiles to search the lake, and they found his body near some thinning ice. No foul play expected. The PC candidate for Kirkfield Park, Kevin Klein, says he's worked for Peter Nygard twice, but only for a short period of time. But the NDP says it has new information which puts that into question. The CBC's Ian Frains joins us now live in the newsroom. Ian, just what are these allegations?
Thanks, Janet. The NDP claims that Kevin Klein, the PC candidate in the upcoming by-election, was working with Peter Nygard longer than he said. Nygard, of course, is the disgraced fashion mogul. He's been accused of sexual assault. Klein has said he worked for Nygard, seen in these pictures, briefly, a few weeks in 2012 and almost 4 months in 2014. But the NDP allege it was longer than that. They point to a 2016 article in the small country of St. Kitts, Nevis, that calls Klein a private sector partner in the regenerative medicine project being built in that country. Nygard was trying at the time to build a regenerative medicine facility in the same country, but for stem cell treatments. The NDP alleged a connection. Here's House Leader Nahanni Fontaine.
Voters deserve to have all of the information in respect of their candidate, in respect of the person who wants to represent them in this legislature. And so Kevin Klein has put other facts on the official record and has seemingly omitted other facts here. And so Manitobans need to know what the full extent of his relationship with Peter Nygard is.
So Ian, what is Kevin Klein saying in response to this?
Well, he answered us by email and is denying any involvement with Nygard and says the NDP has it all wrong. He says Nygard was working on a stem cell facility while Klein was working on a different project, helping the St. Kitts Biomedical Research Foundation with communications. Klein says the NDP and the Liberals last week are pursuing a witch hunt. He says it's a desperate attempt to discredit him in advance of next month's by-election in Kirkfield Park. The vote goes on December 13th. Janet.
Thanks for this, Ian. The CBC's Ian Fraser reporting live from the newsroom. Well, it is taking longer for the new Assiniboine Park attraction, The Leaf, to unfurl than anyone involved in planning it ever anticipated. They initially hoped to have it open 2 years ago. The goal now is to be able to invite the public in during this holiday season. We were allowed in over the weekend to bring you this sneak peek.
Today we're in the tropical biome, the Hartley and Heather Richardson tropical biome. This is at the Leaf in Assiniboine Park, and so this is our first opportunity to get a glimpse of what's going on in this tropical space and the plants that are growing here.
As you can see, we're so close to the finish line, and we can't wait to welcome visitors to this beautiful place over the upcoming holiday season. It's been a long haul, it's been a lot of incredibly hard work by a lot of people, but it's going to be amazing, and we're really, really excited.
For Winnipeg and for Canada, this type of project doesn't get built regularly, so this is a once-in-a-generation experience, and I think everyone here in Winnipeg should be proud.
So there's staff to hire, there's staff to train, there's volunteers to train, and we just want to make sure we're ready to welcome visitors on a daily basis, so we have a little more work to do.
This is a unique space, a unique experience in Winnipeg. I mean, if we look beyond the walls here, we see snow outside, right? And we're standing in a tropical space. That's amazing, that's fantastic. So it's the opportunity to see something of far away right here in Winnipeg. For some people, it's a reminder of home. It's a reminder of where they came from. For other people, it's sort of a hint of where they can go, a hint of another place. And so it's these connections to place and time that really is special. The other cool thing about plant material is that it's going to grow over time. So these trees, these plants, they're going to get bigger, they're going to change, they're going to flower, they're going to fruit. And so it's a dynamic space, and maybe we don't think of plants as dynamic, but they really are, and they're going to grow over time. And so this space, this facility is made for that and made for that experience. The other thing that's here is a restaurant and a cafe that are on the main floor. And again, those as well have a connection to the plant material here, where they hope to feature what we saw rosemary in the Mediterranean garden, and then you'll see rosemary on the menu, and we'll get these connections between plants and what's happening in that restaurant as well.
We will be open for the upcoming holiday season. I just can't tell you exactly which date that will be at this time.
We will let you know when we find out. The Leaf is a $130 million project. A group called No User Fees at Diversity Gardens has raised concern about the cost of admission, saying that it would be too high for many people. Admission at the Leaf will range from $8.50 for a child 3 to 17 to $15.50 for those 18 to 59. Those 60 and older will pay $13.50. Riley Laychuk joins us now. It wasn't exactly tropical, today, but it was mild.
Very mild, and that mild trend is going to continue. The word I'm using for weather tomorrow is sloppy. So if you had plans to wash the car, maybe delay that for a few days and top up your washer fluid. I'll show you why. Here's a look at the satellite radar, and you can see that we do have some snow beginning to move into western Manitoba at this hour, the southwest corner of the province. Weak area of instability along a warm front, going to bring some snow really widespread across southern Manitoba through the evening tonight into tomorrow. So here is a look at Futurecast. You can see this area of low pressure moving toward the east. By 10 o'clock in the evening, we are beginning to get into the snow here in the Red River Valley. This very fast moving. It'll push out by first thing in the morning. Could see a flurry, maybe even a sprinkle early in the morning around the Winnipeg region out toward northwestern Ontario. That clears out as we get into Tuesday. Tuesday, mainly cloudy through much of the day. We will see some clearing later in the afternoon, so expect some sunny breaks later in the afternoon. A very mild and, like I said, a very sloppy day on the way for tomorrow. Then we do see more snow moving into parts of northern Manitoba through Wednesday. This could bring us some flurries, maybe even some showers depending on temperatures later in the week. We'll talk about that a little bit later in the week as well. Okay, as for accumulations, we can expect really generally 2 to 3 centimeters across southern Manitoba. Could see some higher amounts along the international border, but really nothing much in the way of accumulation. Taking us out 48 hours in the north, really just a general 2 to 4 with the system. Could even see some freezing drizzle through the northwestern part of Manitoba through the day tonight and into the day tomorrow, I should say. So temperatures are going to rise, as I mentioned, with that warm front. So tonight at 7 o'clock, temperatures around -5 through southern Manitoba. These will drop and then rise once again as we get into the early part of tomorrow morning. So our temperatures rise through the overnight tonight into tomorrow. Temperatures around that freezing mark as we head into the later part of Tuesday. Right now in Winnipeg, -4, winds out of the southwest at 20. We'll see our winds lightening up as we get into the evening tonight. -5 overnight with that light snow early in the morning tomorrow. A chance of a flurry first thing, winds out of the southwest at 10. -5 when you wake up. And in the afternoon, -1. We'll see some sunny breaks through the later part of the afternoon. And then another cloudy day on the way for Wednesday. Chance of flurries in the evening once again. Mix of sun and cloud for Thursday with a high of 1. More cloud than sun on Friday with a high of 2 degrees. Expect those winds to be an issue as well. Your Manitoba forecast coming up later in the show.
The weather update is brought to you by Home Equip, your trusted local source for Pride Mobility scooters. From sales to rental and repair, our team is here to serve you.
Every 2 years, CBC Manitoba recognizes an outstanding group of young Manitobans, people under the age of 40, who are making a difference in their communities. Tonight, we begin sharing their inspiring stories.
So I'm Dr. Karina Kwolek, an assistant professor at the College of Pharmacy in the Rainey's Faculty of Health Sciences at the University of Manitoba. I mostly do research and also teaching, and so I do research in the areas of multiple sclerosis and schizophrenia. And in my teaching arm of things, I teach PharmD students, which are students that are going on to become doctors of pharmacy. My research is in an area called precision medicine. So basically, we try to find ways of using people's genetic information to guide either drug prescribing or to guide whether or not someone's going to have risk of like a bad outcome or risk of things like suicide or of early mortality or things like that. So it's sort of this idea that not one size or one idea fits everyone. So most public health and health measures are made for populations, whereas we know that each individual varies quite a bit in terms of whether they respond to a drug or what the risk is of having a bad outcome. So this is just a way of essentially taking personalized medicine, which is really what is already done nowadays with a doctor and a patient, and taking it to the next level, which would be precision, which would be using more pieces of information that we haven't in the past, like genetic information, and also can be extended to other things like protein levels or even more precise things like that. So I think a lot of times it's not known sort of even what type of research is going on in Manitoba, but the type of data that they have in Manitoba is really unique in Canada and also even around the world. And it's something that I think that hopefully people will come to know more as time goes on. Hopefully even the research that I do, if I can communicate it to more people, I think the better it is. The research is only as good as it gets into the hands of people that actually need it. And so I think that's something that's really unique about Manitoba is the type of data that we have here, and also even the expertise as well. There's a lot of expertise in MS and also in psychiatric diseases too. I really hope that one day we can get to the position where if someone comes into a clinic, and they're diagnosed with some kind of severe condition like MS or schizophrenia, that we can tell them, okay, you're obviously diagnosed with this disease or disorder. We're hoping that we can tell you kind of what's going to happen to you. Hopefully give them some peace of mind that, this is, you need this treatment because that'll give you better odds of having a good outcome. or you should avoid this medication, or you should avoid this type of treatment plan because it just won't work based off of your personal kind of makeup.
By the way, you'll find videos on all our Future 40 Top 10 on our CBC Manitoba YouTube page. You'll also find a story on the history of Norway House that includes some stunning drone footage. Click subscribe while you're on the page and stay up to date. National and international news after the break. Stay with us. This will be a big week of testimony at the inquiry into the federal government's use of the Emergencies Act. Today, it heard from government ministers as well as the top official at Canada's spy agency. The head of CSIS says he recommended the government invoke the legislation during the convoy protests last winter. Marina von Stackelberg explains.
For the record, please state your full name. The head of the Canadian Security Intelligence Service, also known as CSIS, says he felt the Emergencies Act was required. And he says he told the Prime Minister that directly. The advice came the day before the government would bring in the never-before-used legislation. It gave sweeping powers to authorities to shut down protests. It was February 13th. Downtown Ottawa had been occupied by convoy protesters for 3 weeks. Borders to the United States remained blockaded. The Prime Minister held a special meeting of cabinet and experts. At the end of the meeting, he asked CSIS Director David Vigneault what he thought.
He advised the Prime Minister of his belief that it was indeed required to invoke the Act. And again, you remember saying that during the closed session?
Yes. To invoke the Emergencies Act, the government must believe there is a threat to Canada's security, one so serious it's a national emergency. It needs to endanger the lives, health, or safety of Canadians, and must be so major local authorities can't deal with it. The inquiry has repeatedly heard evidence that earlier on, the CSIS director did not think the convoy posed a threat to national security based on its own criteria. But Vigneault testified he then learned the Emergencies Act used a broader definition of a threat. So that night, he told the Prime Minister, based on what he was seeing across the country, the bar was met to invoke the Act.
We know the Act fairly well, of CSIS Act. I was not familiar with the details of the Emergencies Act.
Last week, 2 senior government officials, the clerk of the Privy Council and a top security advisor, both testified they also recommended the government use the Act. And now cabinet ministers have begun to explain why they decided to invoke it.
I don't want to minimize what was going on in Ottawa by any stretch of the imagination, but right across the country, particularly as it pertains to critical infrastructure, for me, elevated the situation to a national emergency.
This is the most anticipated week of the inquiry. The public will finally hear from those who ultimately made the decision to invoke the Act. That includes top-ranking cabinet ministers and the Prime Minister himself. He's set to testify on Friday. Marina von Stackelberg, CBC News, Ottawa.
Officials in Indonesia say an earthquake has killed at least 162 people. Many of those who died were children, killed as schools collapsed. Hundreds of people were treated in hospital parking lots. Ambulances were still arriving late into the night. This quake was strong and it was shallow. It happened on the central island of Java, less than 100 kilometers from the capital, Jakarta. Search and rescue operations have been hampered by scores of aftershocks. Officials believe as the search effort progresses, more bodies will be found. There have been fresh calls today to create a protection zone around the Zaporizhzhia nuclear plant in Ukraine. Heavy shelling there over the weekend damaged parts of the plant. As the CBC's Ashley Burke reports, inspectors are assessing the site.
The UN's nuclear watchdog called it madness that Europe's largest power plant is at the front line of this war. The head of the International Atomic Energy Agency issued a statement saying that his agency recorded more than a dozen blasts over the weekend at the power plant. And he said whoever is behind it must stop, that they're playing with fire.
Wherever you sit in this tragic episode of contemporary history, no one can benefit or would benefit from a nuclear accident to be added to the enormous trauma of the war which is ongoing.
Zaporizhzhia power plant is in Russian-occupied territory and has been turned into a military base. It largely sits idle, but Ukrainian workers are still inside, cooling 6 reactors. And the concern is that if the power plant loses power, there could be the possibility of a nuclear disaster, according to the UN's watchdog. The IAEA is on site today assessing the damage from the weekend and says so far there is damage to systems, buildings, and equipment, but nothing critical to nuclear safety.
Росія зробила ставку на геноцидну політику.
Ukraine's president addressed today's NATO assembly meeting and called for protection of the nuclear plant. Both Ukraine and Russia blame each other. Meanwhile, the UN continues to call for a demilitarized zone around the power plant. Ashley Burke, CBC News, London.
A Manitoba theatre company celebrates 50 years of creation and connection this week. We'll have more on that. Plus, Riley will have the Manitoba forecast. You're watching CBC Winnipeg News. This is a busy week for Winnipeg's Prairie Theatre Exchange. The company's just wrapped its last play, Bad Parent. It's working now on its next production, Outside Jokes, A Christmas Carol. And it's also celebrating its 50th anniversary. I spoke with artistic director Thomas Morgan-Jones about that milestone. Thomas Morgan-Jones, thanks for joining us.
Thanks so much for having me.
Give us a sense of how big a milestone 50 years is for a Canadian theatre company.
Yeah, I mean, it's really absolutely extraordinary. For any organization of any kind to reach half a century, I think is a pretty big milestone. But for an arts organization and for a professional theater, like a not-for-profit charity theater, it doesn't get bigger than that. But I think what's like exciting to us here at the theater is that 50 years itself is a milestone, but is spending some time to go back on what that means and how many people this theater has impacted over those years. Artists, certainly, staff, for sure, but also audiences from all over this province, but all over the country. And as we're celebrating it, we're reaching out to folks to try to get stories about, what their time has been like with PTE over the past 5 decades. And it's tremendously moving to feel what kind of impact this organization has had, in Winnipeg provincially, but also nationally.
There's something that you get from live theater that you can't get as easily from film and TV, and it's that connection with an audience. Would you agree?
Absolutely. It's my favorite thing about theater. There's something about, it's an agreement we all make. Like something that I think a lot about is that every moment of every day, like every second, every minute, hour, it'll never be repeated again. We don't ever get that time back. It's a one-time thing. And when a group of people choose to spend that time together in one place, it's really significant. And you don't have your phone with you, you don't have your family necessarily with you unless you've gone to the theater with them. It's like this really special time where it's you and then these actors receiving story and having, sometimes you're laughing, sometimes you're crying, but you're encountering the stories of people navigating the world, and which is making you ask questions about how you navigate the world. And for us all to be doing that together at the same time, it's profound, I think.
We've all been navigating post-COVID, how comfortable we feel assembling in large groups like theaters with other people. How are things for Prairie Theatre Exchange in terms of people coming back to the building?
Yeah, they're good, I'd say. I wouldn't say they're not good. I wouldn't say they're fantastic. And I hear in a lot of industries right now that folks are slow to return, which sometimes is building a narrative of people saying, audiences aren't coming back, which is not at all true. We have an amazing subscription base. We've had lots of people come to the theater for the first time ever with a show that we just did. But it is it's a bit slower than we're used to. And I'm sure there are a lot of reasons for that. Like some people are still hesitant to be in large groups. Inflation is certainly a thing, and it's changing people's availability to use income for arts and entertainment and any number of things. But we're encouraged. We're encouraged to see that people are coming back and people are coming for the first time. And we know that that'll only grow over time. We're in a really singular moment right now, I feel like. And as long as we can navigate it, healthily and with a big heart, I think we'll be just fine.
What's your goal, quickly? We only really have 30 seconds left, so this is a big question for this end of the interview. But for the next decade, what do you want to see Prairie Theatre Exchange accomplish?
We want to impact as many people as we possibly can with the live performing arts in a way that fills their life with great joy and hopefully profundity, and to really be a part of this community.
Thomas Morgan-Jones, thank you so much for your time today, and congratulations on the anniversary.
Amazing. Thank you.
Our weather specialist, Riley Laychuk, joins us once again. So you were talking about snow. How widespread is this going to be?
Yeah, generally across southern Manitoba, we're going to see some of this snow, 2 to 3 centimeters, a fairly good bet for most locations. As we look at satellite radar, you can see that the leading edge of this has already begun to move into parts of southwestern Manitoba, areas like Brandon, up toward Riding Mountain National Park, down toward Melita. Starting to see some of the snow already. Even some mixing, some reports of some freezing rain earlier in the afternoon out in Saskatchewan in the Regina area. So definitely right on the freezing mark in many locations this evening. -2 in Regina right now, at +7 in Calgary and Vancouver, Victoria at 8 degrees. -19 in Churchill. Looking toward the eastern part of the country, single digits in Ontario, Windsor, Toronto, Ottawa, Montreal at 3 degrees as well. Seeing some snow in Quebec at the moment, out into the Maritimes as well, -4 in Charlottetown. A little closer to home, temperatures around -4, -5. This is where we have been really through much of the day today. We're at -5 for the longest time in Winnipeg, up to -4 at the Forks of Sour, -5s out around the capital region, a -7 in Brandon, -4 in Dauphin, -6 in Melita right now, where we're starting to see that snow begin to move in. -6s up the western edge of northern Manitoba, -12 in Gillam, -19 in Churchill. So expect some flurries tonight through northwestern Ontario as that area of low pressure begins to push toward the east, -9 in Fort Francis, -8 in Dryden this evening. Into southeastern Manitoba, that light snow moving in tonight, -7 toward Emerson, Steinbach, and Sprague, -5 the low tonight in Winnipeg. We'll actually see our temperature rising through the overnight tonight, -7 in Brandon with that light snow, 2 to 3 centimeters generally across southern Manitoba. We do have a risk of freezing drizzle overnight tonight into the early part of tomorrow morning as well for Flin Flon. The Pas, we could see really this widespread chance of light snow really across northern Manitoba. -1s for the Pas and Norway House tomorrow. We should be around -5, -6 for this time of the year. -1 in Swan River, or +1, that is. We're above 0. 2 degrees in Brandon and Dauphin, 1 degree in Morden Winkler. We'll see some sunny breaks in the afternoon, -2 in Emerson, Steinbach, and Sprague, right around the freezing mark around the Winnipeg region tomorrow, and into northwestern Ontario. Temperatures right around the freezing mark as well. We do have a risk of freezing drizzle really across northwestern Ontario tomorrow. Chance we could see some early morning flurries lingering through the northwestern part of Ontario. All of your 7-day forecast coming up. I'll tell you when temperatures like this will be sticking around for, and when we could see our chance for some more accumulating snow on the way. Janet?
Thanks, Riley. If you've been in the market for a new car recently, you may have encountered a long wait list. But as CBC's Go Public unit found, even once your vehicle finally arrives at the dealership, you could be asked to pay more than you expected. That story after the break. Buying a new car isn't cheap, and with ongoing supply issues, it can take a long time to get one. Against that background, CBC's Go Public has learned prices are sometimes going up now at the last minute in a sale. Erica Johnson explains.
Every time Randy Lowry goes for a drive, he worries. His car is 17 years old and breaking down. He settles on a new Kia Telluride, signs an agreement, and puts down a $1,000 deposit. 4 months later, his car arrives, so he heads down to the dealership and speaks to the sales manager.
And about the first words out of his mouth were, "There's been a price adjustment." To which I said, "Well, no, there hasn't, because we have a contract."
The dealer had added another $2,400 to the bill, a market adjustment fee.
Disappointed would be putting it mildly.
Across the country, customers are being forced to pay additional fees or buy extras like extended warranties and service plans.
They told them that they have no choice but to accept these new conditions, otherwise the car is going to go to another customer. And I don't know what else you can call that other than extortion.
Another dealership told this couple they had to pay an extra $5,000 fee if they wanted a car.
And the only excuse they had was that because of the shortage of vehicles, everybody was doing it.
A microchip shortage and other supply chain issues in the pandemic has meant a shortage of cars and a chance to jack up the bill.
For every 30 cars they have coming in, they have 100 customers that want the car.
Thing is, it's all happening thanks to a loophole. Provincial regulators we spoke to said they can only investigate if shoppers have seen an advertised price that doesn't include those extra costs.
Unfortunately, the legislation doesn't necessarily give us the authority to do anything about it.
Lowry ended up walking away from the deal and says he's too discouraged to keep shopping. Go Public asked Kia Canada about his case. The car manufacturer said it has no control over sales, that franchises are independently owned and operated, but said in this volatile market, dealerships are encouraged to uphold pricing whenever possible. Erica Johnson, CBC News, Vancouver.
Davis Inlet made international headlines back in the 1990s when the Innu community in northern Labrador was struck by tragedy. Images of addiction and despair were seen around the globe. As the CBC's Ariana Keeland reports, the Mushwa Innu First Nation is still dealing with unfulfilled promises from the federal and provincial governments.
A lot of good and bad memories here.
Gregory Rich is the former Grand Chief of the Innu Nation. Davis Inlet was his home.
The house fire, it's on the hills there.
On Valentine's Day 1992, Rich's 5 children and another child died alone while Gregory and his wife weren't home. It's part of the tragic history in Davis Inlet. International attention in the early 1990s on the health and addictions crisis that gripped the community forced Ottawa's hand, and the feds promised to move the Innu to a new community of their choosing. They also promised to decommission Davis Inlet. This December marks 20 years since the Innu moved from Davis Inlet to Natwashish, but Davis Inlet remains as it was.
When we signed the relocation agreement, we assumed and thought that that it will be completed, but now decommissioning is one of it that part of that's not completed.
Last year, the Canadian Human Rights Commission tabled its third blistering report outlining failures by the provincial and federal governments in their treatment of the Innu of Labrador. Decommissioning Davis Inlet is a repeated recommendation by the Commission.
And as formal discussions start on land claims.
But the greatest failure, the report says, is that Ottawa and the Innu still have not reached an agreement on self-governance. 30 years now and counting.
I do not expect the negotiations to be easy.
Former Conservative MP Peter Panashaway has been at the negotiating table since the 1990s.
Is it trust or is it racism? Right? Racism to me is that one group of people feel that they're superior over another group. They know what's best for the other group. And I think that's what's happening.
As the community and the feds begin to work to take apart Davis Inlet, the key to the Innu's successful future still lies in wait. The Government of Canada says it acknowledges the existence of systemic racism and that it recognizes that it is crucial to conclude this agreement between Canada and the Mushwa Innu. For those looking in, Davis Inlet was a symbol of despair. But for Gregory Rich, his feelings for this place are complicated.
Even though I suffered a great loss, but I miss this place sometimes.
Ariana Kelland, CBC News, Davis Inlet.
NASA's Orion capsule has reached the moon's orbit after it was launched last Wednesday. The capsule sent a video as it whipped around the far side of the moon. You can see Earth as a small blue sphere. On its closest approach, Orion was about 130 kilometers from the lunar surface. It soared high above Tranquility Base, where humans first walked on the moon 53 years ago. The capsule will spend a week in lunar orbit before splashing down in the Pacific Ocean on December 11th. Your 7-day forecast and daily lift are still to come. As we head to break, meet another exceptional Manitoban under 40.
Hi, my name is Ben Carr, and I'm a Future 40 winner. So the last couple of years, I was the principal of the Maples Med School in the Seven Oaks School Division, which is a wonderful school, one of only 3 of its kind in the country. I just launched with my colleagues Rebecca Chartrand and Michelle Boyven a new consulting firm, which is Indigenous owned and led and supported by folks such as myself, called Indigenous Strategy Alliance here in Winnipeg. Well, most recently, we finished a report for the Department of Education on the impacts of poverty on education in Manitoba. But really, one of the things that we're working towards right now is discovering ways in which post-secondary institutions across the country are meeting their obligations to Indigenous students and towards a number of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission calls to action specifically related to education. Well, I think that making change is really what we're obligated to do with the time that we have. I'm very privileged to come from a background that provided me with a number of opportunities that I know aren't as easily accessible to a number of people in our community and our society more broadly speaking. So for me, it's about leveraging whatever gifts you may have and whatever privilege you may have been blessed with in order to take that and ensure that somebody else has an opportunity to achieve good things, and then in turn to put them into a position where they're able to affect change on their end. Oh, it's really an honor. I'm truly grateful to my friend Chief Cindy Woodhouse, who nominated me. I guess she saw something in the work that we've done together that she felt merited recognition, but really it's because of people like Cindy, my friend and mentor Kevin Lamoureux, who's a professor at the University of Winnipeg, Sharon Red Sky, Rebecca Chartrand, a variety of other people who have really helped me understand how to be a leader, how to engage with compassion, how to understand where I come from and where other people come from, and the ways in which you can leverage the strengths and skills that you have to make a difference in your community.
Make what you can of this holiday season. Make the season merry. Make the season joyous. Make the season hopeful. Make the season kind. CBC is devoting 1 day of programming in support of Harvest Manitoba. Live music and inspiring stories that will make the season of giving about giving. Watch and listen to Make the Season Kind, Friday, December 2nd.
Southwest parts of Manitoba starting to see the snow already moving in areas like Brandon up toward Dauphin, down into Verdun and Melita, starting to see some of this snow that we're expecting. As I mentioned earlier, generally 2 to 3 centimeters a good bet for southern Manitoba. So tomorrow, cloud cover. We'll see some sunny breaks later in the afternoon. Forecast high of -1. Our normal for this time of the year is -4, so we're well above that mark by a few degrees at least. 0 for Wednesday. Then we get up into the low single digits for Thursday and Friday. Another windy one on Friday with a high of 2 degrees. The weekend's looking not bad either. Temperatures at 0 for Saturday, -5 for Sunday. And then Monday we see what could be the next sort of significant start to the next weather maker for us. We could see some significant snow moving into next Monday and Tuesday. So it was a very special weekend, a special visitor dropping into Winnipeg to kick off the holiday season. Jolly old St. Nick was in town for the Santa Claus parade on the weekend.
Tens of thousands of Winnipeggers were thrilled to be back, bundled up, watched the floats along Portage Avenue. CBC videographer Walter Burnell was one of them. Here is your daily lift. Nice to see the parade back.
Very magical.
Walter Bernal was the editor of that, and apparently our Kevin Nipatebo was the shooter who collected those images for us. So thank you guys, as everything is around here. Thank you for being with us. Have a great weekend. Yeah, it's Monday. I'm talking about the weekend already. See you tomorrow.